Welcome to another episode of Ask the Zamboni Experts. I'm your host, Doug Peters, and along with me today from the Zamboni Company is Marty Elliott and Paula Coony. Our guest on today's episode of Ask the Zamboni Experts is David Klutho, veteran SI photographer. Today we're going to be talking about his career and his photography skills. Welcome, David, and thanks for joining us.
It's nice to be here.
Trying to learn a little bit about yourself, can you tell our listeners where you grew up?
In St. Louis, Missouri, and still here basically.
So you get to enjoy all that great food that's on the hill in the St. Louis area then, don't you?
Yes, a lot of pasta. It's bad for you, but it's good for you.
Great. Can you tell our listeners when you knew that you wanted to be a professional photographer?
Well, my uncle had an Exacta camera with all the dials and bells and whistles, and I was just enamored over, like, look at this thing, and I just was interested in the mechanics of it and whatnot. And then in 8th grade, my mom had suggested I go to a course they were offering at the local high school. I was in 8th grade, or just finished 8th grade, and I took this course and got hooked on it. It was a summer school course. And my uncle's friend that he plays tennis with had an extra camera he was selling. So I bought a Pentax, like, screw mount lens camera, and I was off and running. And that was, right before I went into high school. And then, but prior to that, I'd been following SI, all the photographers. I had a subscription, and I was able to, just follow these guys and look at what they're doing. And I told my mom in 8th grade, after that course, before I started freshman in high school, that I'm going to be a photographer for Sports Illustrated. And that was my life goal from then on at 13. So after that, I went through high school and, did it all, the newspaper, the yearbook, and was able to hone the skills, I was that into it. And then from there, I went to Missouri, the University of Missouri, and that's the big J school, journalism school. And then I went there, and but I didn't major in journalism. I majored in business, because by the time I got to college, I had done so much work in high school on my own that I didn't feel like the schooling of photography was going to do me any good, and I was right. So I walked in to the head guy of the athletic department at Missouri, the University of Missouri. His name was Bill Callahan. He basically invented the idea of sports information and marketing. And I walked into his office as a freshman, right from my dorm that I just arrived at, and I said, I want to do pictures for you. And I had no idea who he was. And he said, well, what do you shoot? And I had a portfolio ready to go from the high school of all these sports. And I showed him to him. And this is a big time school. And he said, he looked at him and he goes, when can you start? Can you do our opening football game this weekend? And I go, well, yeah. So here is a freshman right off the bus doing all the photography for the University of Missouri for 4 years. And all the people in the J school, I'd see them at games and they say, why aren't you in class? I never see you in class. Well, because I don't go to those classes. I'm a business major. Well, how are you having this? Why do you have this? Like, they were mad because it was the best job on campus for photography. And I did it for 4 years.
It's Paula. I've got a question for you. When you were in college, were you using film at the time? I mean, a lot of people now probably take it for granted because film was a whole different world and everybody's got, the ability to do digital photography. But I'm guessing when you were there that was what you guys were using.
Well, frankly, yeah, digital really didn't until the late 90s. Digital wasn't even a thing, because the digital thing, that was a Sony camera that came out with a 1 megapixel chip, and it was on a floppy disk, or it wasn't even a chip, it was a floppy disk, and that came out in '98.
I laughed about that camamera. It was that floppy disk thing was crazy. Yeah, you had to carry around floppy disks, and you could get like 10 pictures on one of those cameras.
Oh yeah,
those were
so this was 100% film. I went to the dark room on campus. Everything was, yeah, totally like that, and that's why I could go and did what I did, because back then you didn't have these people that were living by the technology of the camera and I'll fix it later in post, or I'll shoot this motorized camera and I'll be sure I'll get something. You had to shoot single frame stuff. You had to know what you're doing. You had to meter every picture. You had to shoot, and not everybody. That was a craft back then. You had it. That's exactly what it was. Like nowadays, I always wanted to do manual month and have everybody in the entire country have to shoot manually, meter, have to shoot film, and I'm not kidding, 90% or more, probably more, of the whole entire photography world couldn't do the job.
David, that would be like asking millennials to use a Thomas guide to get around town. I really don't think they'd be able to handle that. They need their phone to tell them where to go. I do remember working when I was 100 years ago as a teenager at a place called Photozines. Do you remember that? Those places where they would put you on a magazine cover, like you would take a picture.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The cover of Sports Illustrated. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had to process stuff in the darkroom, and I don't like remembering the smell of those places. So no wonder no one knew where you were. You were busy doing all of your processing after all your shooting.
Yeah, no, and it was fun to have that thing, that thing of doing all this stuff and no one even knows you're doing it almost. But that was the training ground, because it was a big time university. So they had all the major sports, and in fact, the strobes that people use, that was back then, the strobes that light the whole building up at once, and we use them for hockey, basketball, most indoor sports. Back then, in like 79, 80, I put a full set into the arenas in the University of Missouri, and I was probably basically one of the only people in the country shooting other than SI with strobes of full sets, because I did the research and I found out where to buy these ones that just came out, and I put them in because they didn't know what I was doing. But then when I started shooting, to use strobes on chrome film is just night and day. That's why SI used to, back in the 80s, they were the only ones that had these crystal clear pictures because they were using strobes. So I did that in college. So that led me to SI. So it's all connected.
David, let me jump in because you said they had most major sports. The University of Missouri, as I understand it, is lacking the most major sport, is it not? In that it doesn't host a D1 hockey program, or has that changed?
No, they've only had a club team. That's still the same. It's just one of those things. There's so many universities that don't have a hockey team. It's mostly club teams. A lot of lacrosse is like that too. They have teams, but they're just club teams that play regionally with other schools that have club teams.
Well, we have to work on that to get them up to D1 so that you can shoot, I believe, your favorite sport. Is it not ice hockey?
Well, my favorite sport to shoot is, I guess, it would be ice hockey, because frankly, the ice hockey is the most challenging. I mean, it's one of those sports where you don't know where anything's coming from. It's not regimented like basketball. Basketball is one of those things where you end up, they go to the rim. You can set up remotes because kind of where people are headed, and it's challenging because they could be right in front of you because someone checks into the boards, or they could be a shot that comes from the point, or they could be something that's going off in the corner, but the puck's not anywhere near it. So you have to almost have this mindset of following the game in your mind, and just going with whatever it gives you. It's very erratic, and that's why people always say it's really one of the hardest ones. I mean, it takes the most effort, because since it's continuous and moving, and you just never know where the action will be. The one thing that's interesting, it equates to the driving your car and you're just daydreaming, and then you're going around a curve and go around another curve, and then like 5 miles later you think, God, I wasn't paying attention. Everybody knows what that feels like. But I'll be at the game, and because we're shooting strobes, so you get one picture every 3 seconds. So none of this covering yourself by machine gunning it, which people do now because they can. So I'm sitting there, and when you see a picture of a slap shot and the puck's right there, that was one picture. So you're timing it to one picture. on all those older hockey shows, especially in the anything before digital. So I will find myself at games. I'm automatically taking these pictures. I am not even thinking about it. It's that kind of a thing. It's crazy. And I tell people that, and they go, "Oh no, that's not true." But it's nuts. I am sitting there, and the guy's passing it out and shooting it, and the guy's making the save, and I shoot. I pick what I want, but I'm doing it subconsciously all the time.
You know the game. Well, I've got a couple other questions.
I want to tell you what my favorite sport that's not hockey is. Because you said, what's my favorite sport to shoot? Well, the not hockey one would be World Championship boomerang.
And where is that held?
All over the place. You know,
okay.
They have a tournament, and they have national championships, and then they have world championships. And so, there's all kinds of disciplines to it. There's maximum time aloft. There's long distance. There's fast catching. It's very crazy. Anyway, and I know the world champion guys, and they're great guys, and we did 3D with them. But the only thing I can think of why I gravitated to that is because the boomerang seems like a blade of a hockey stick. That's the only way I can think of why I like it.
So like I'm old enough to recall Gilligan's Island on a first run. Didn't Gilligan used to have like a boomerang? And do they ever in those championships have them sharpened up so that they can have the contest to see if they can decapitate anybody by chucking them? Or
they have
that might be a new discipline.
Well, they have a thing called a Kylie stick, and it's made by the Aborigines to hunt, and it looks like it's a long, elongated kind of, looks like a women's field hockey stick or something. But they throw it, and they can be accurate. The guy was showing me it, and they could knock down a deer and kill it. I mean, I'm just saying, this all evolved from Australia and the Aborigines and stuff. That's where this all evolved from. But the U.S. has some of the best boomerang throwers in the world, and that's why I ended up doing.
Well, next time you go to one of these, you're going to have to send me an invite, and I will carry your supply bag, even though I might not be able to lift that based on what I recall seeing your camera bags look like and weigh. But I would love an invite to go to something like that, because I think that would be fun to watch these people do that.
All right. Well, I'm going to go here. Let me get my pen. I'm crossing you off the list here, and I'll put you onto the boomerang thing. I crossed you off the assisting on the swimsuit issue, and then I would get something else for that. So
I'm good for both. I'll have to get a pass on the first one with my wife, though.
I'm just saying.
Hey, I do have a couple of questions that came to mind while you were talking about when you wanted to become a professional, or when you knew you wanted to become. Can you explain to our listeners what exactly an Exacta camera is? And I can't imagine that that's like an Exacta and a horse where you have to pick who runs first and who runs second. So can you tell us a little bit about an Exacta camera?
Well, it's a German silvery camera, and it was very complicated looking. It's like all the dials have these marks on them and stuff. So it really looked like a real complicated thing. And they were a big player in the old school. And it was a rangefinder camera, I believe. And then they made single lens reflex versions, but it was very complicated. It's like you see a machine or something that looks really complicated, and that's what intrigued me, because it was really like, God, I want to learn how to do all these settings, because everything back then was manual. They didn't even have auto in the cameras back then. So you literally had to. You might have a light meter in there, but then you had to physically set everything. So that intrigued me. And I'm still a tinkerer, because I make things all the time to use that don't exist for photography stuff, especially for remotes and such. So I still have that bug.
Okay, I'm gonna bring back some memories of my ute when I was young, which was a long while ago. My oldest grandfather, had a little black box camera that you kind of looked down through the top, if I remember right. And you did some adjustments. Did you ever mess with any kind of camera like that?
Oh yeah, I've had them all. See, that's the thing with film. When I got into this, that existed. It was a 220 film, so it was a bigger negative. It's the same as Hasselblad, only it was a box. And Hasselblad had the same thing. That was the high-end version of that kind of thing. And it has a waist level viewfinder is what that is. So you're basically holding the camera at your waist, looking down at it, and it's reversed. So it's always kind of confusing because it's not a prism. So and we use those for the NBA and all hockey. I shot 3D. You know what a Hasselblad is? And you've seen them. They're the higher end version of that. They're silver and black, and they're real, fancy looking. But we used to use those at games because the negative was 3 times as big as a 35 millimeter. So your resolution is huge difference, and it had a 500 second sync speed, which in hockey it froze the action tons better than the 35 millimeter. So on any of these remotes, we will put those up as those. In fact, when I was, it would just, you'd be surprised at the difference in resolution. So we used to bring 10 of those to a game and put 10 different remotes up, like for basketball or hockey, and like one over the goal judge, one on the one side, one we put them in the rafters looking straight down. And we had the equipment that we actually developed that sync cameras. It started out as a wired version, and then we did a wireless version. And so we could take, for example, if you're at the Stanley Cup and you're putting it at one end, you want to put some remotes. So you do one behind the net, like the goal judge, one on top of the goal judge box, one in the ceiling looking down, and one on one side or the other of the goalie looking back into it. And maybe from the other end. So you could have 5 cameras on one end. And when I pushed the one button, because they're on strobes, because you needed a lot of light with those cameras, because we're using a slow slide film. So we're using 100 ASA film. So we need a ton of light, which we got for the strobes. But then all the cameras would go off with one strobe press, with one press of my button that I have, wired to this wireless ensemble. It would fire all 5 cameras at the exact moment. So I literally have like if you got a goal with the puck's in the air, you got literally the exact same moment, because it's synced with the strobe. One strobe pop and it's synced with it.
David, that reminds me of kind of how we got to know you. And it had to have been like right around the Olympics in Salt Lake. And I think, did Richard Zamboni write you a letter by chance? Because I think he got some slides from you, or somehow we connected with you because we saw some like overhead shots and some really cool, like from inside the net of the machine. I think he reached out to you. Do you remember that?
Well, it's either the Salt Lake, or it could have been Torino. I know he's got the ones from the Torino.
Yeah, we have stuff from you from Torino, but I know we have some Salt Lake too.
Well, Salt Lake is where I think that's the only time in the history of the Olympics they allowed strobes.
Yeah, those pictures were like the first time I think that Richard had seen stuff that just kind of blew his mind. Because, there's the general, somebody's on the ice, they take a picture of the machine, but there was stuff from just all over the building and some really unique perspective shots there.
Well, that's what, and the lighting, because like I said, the strobes make a huge difference. And we were allowed, as SI was allowed, the only person that's ever strobed the Olympics for hockey, I think. And I shot the whole Salt Lake City Olympics with strobes, which was unheard of back then.
Get those strobes put into the Hockey Hall of Fame. They're that important of a piece of memorabilia.
Oh, I got all kinds of stuff I should give to them. So I've got the first camera I used at SI. I still have it here, and it's got a dent in the hood from the hockey from the first year I shot hockey. So
I have another question for you. You mentioned that you told your mom when you were 13 that you were going to be a professional photographer. Did she believe you when you said that?
Let's put it this way. I didn't tell her that. I told her I was going to be a photographer for Sports Illustrated. I didn't say I want to be a professional photographer. That wasn't good enough, see? And I told her that. I said, I want to be a photographer for Sports Illustrated. I'm holding the magazine, showing her it. I'm saying this. And but see, back then, I started buying some equipment, and then they got kind of worried, like, God, are you wasting your money? And then like when I went to Mizzou, and I bought those strobes. I remember, my grandma died, I think, and there was a little money left to each kid, each grandkid, and I said, I want to spend all this money on these strobes, and they looked at me like, and they let me do it because again they saw that I was doing all this stuff about making this really work. I'm putting the time in. It wasn't like I'm just kind of a kid that wants to be a Major League Baseball player, but he doesn't want to do practice and work on stuff. I was always doing stuff, and also those big lenses like a 300-2.8 or a 400-2.8. I was in at Mizzou, and I had those, and most other people didn't have it at all. I might have been the only one there. All this J school and everybody's, and I got all this other stuff because it's like, wait a minute, that, and so okay, go ahead.
Grandma died and leaves you some money. You buy all these devices to improve the quality of your art, your craft. You're at the University of Minnesota, or I'm not University of Minnesota, University of Missouri. Sorry about that. It's, they all start with an M, and being from Minnesota, I can't get that out of my head.
Yeah, there you go.
Tell us how you transitioned from being a college student and hopefully a graduate at U of Missouri to working for SI.
Well, luckily, that is one of those things that's a great story because it's hilarious. I was in an apartment somewhere in St. Louis, and my parents still live where they live now, actually. But they my dad calls me. He said, somebody called this morning. This is Sunday morning at 10 in the morning. Okay, they just got back from church, and here they get this call, and it's some guy that says, asking for me, and he says, and this is in February of '86, and he says, my dad goes, well, who is this? And he goes, well, this is I'm with Sports Illustrated. And my dad's like, and it looks, it's a 212 number. They had caller ID back then. So, and he's like, and he goes, okay. And it was Jeff Weig from Sports Illustrated. He was their hockey editor. He was in charge of all the hockey photos. And he says, well, can you have him call me? And my dad goes, wrote the number down. Okay. So then he calls me later in the day, and he said, some guy called this morning from Sports Illustrated, and he wants you to call him back. And I'm saying, okay, who's punking me? Because everybody knew I wanted to do this. And there's a lot of naysayers that said, oh, you're never going to do that. Just like a kid saying, I want to be in a Major League Baseball player. And you're saying, well, you better stay in school, And I'm sitting there like, okay, so I'll say, I'll bite. So I called back, and Jeff White answers the phone. He goes, yeah, because I called the 212 number. I don't know anybody in New York. And I said, yeah, this is Dave Klutho calling you back. And he goes, oh yeah, we wanted to ask you because we got your name from the Blues, because I had been shooting pictures as a practicing down at the Blues. We had strobes set up there. Again, we had strobes set up there. And this was all in the intent to eventually go to Sports Illustrated and show them a portfolio. That was the end game, but I was still, in my estimation, training myself. I wanted to be ready. It's one of those, you get one first impression kind of deal, and I said, I want to really hit it right. So, and I knew that worked with Mizzou because I walked in there and I saw that he just said, oh yeah, we got to do, set me up. So I wanted the same thing. I wanted no question to be asked. So he goes, they were doing a story on hockey fighting. So as people know, you can't predict where fights are going to happen. And that's another random thing in hockey. So he got my name because he was calling all the teams saying, hey, if you have anybody that shoots for you, that we want to, give me your name. So he said, we're looking to do a hockey fight picture story. And we wanted to know if you had any. And I go, well, yeah, I have some. I don't know if it's what you want because those are so random. A lot of times fight pictures are just some guys hugging and stuff. So I said, well, send us these. So he gave me a FedEx number, and I sent him I had like 3 or 4 slide pages of stuff, and I didn't know, what they really even, and he even said, I know they might not be great, but we'll just do whatever. So anyway, so I ended up going to send him a package for on Monday for Tuesday, and he like clockwork on Tuesday at 10:30. That's when FedEx comes. He calls me back, and he looked at me. He goes, who does your lighting? Because this is the guy that's all they see at SI is that lighting, and no one else does it. No one else is doing it. Maybe a random team photographer, but mostly not. Mostly zero across the country. Back then. And we had a full set. We had pulled no punches, a full set of strobes. And I said, well, I do. And he goes, you do? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And he goes, because because we did we were using strobes that were better than theirs. So, because they just came out, and that's what we bought. So anyway, so he goes, well, there's some good stuff here but we want to be able to, so we're gonna hold on to these, but do you do any other sports? And I said, well, we want to see some other hockey maybe, because I didn't send him any really hockey. I just sent him some fight pictures of people rolling around. So I said, I'll send you some more with some, and he goes, do you do any other sports? And I go, yeah, I mean, I do some other sports. So then, and I got together like 60 slides maybe. So that's like 3 pages. Now keep in mind, this is where it's different than nowadays. These slides you're looking at the full frame, you're looking at if they're in focus or not, you're looking at if they're exposed correctly, you're looking if they're composed correctly. All these factors you can see because he's using the originals. Nowadays, these people are cropping heavily, they're toning everything, they're sharpening everything, and this is not that. This is like you had to get these out of the camera without even knowing what you had during a game. See, you have no idea, so you have to have the confidence to, hey, I'm going to make this work. I got to make this work. Anyway, so I sent him this 60 pictures. And he, like clockwork, 10:30, I get this call because I sent them. I mean, because I was ready for this. Luckily, because I was really close to making a trek up there. So I sent them strobed hockey, as good as good or better as anything they have at all. Strobed NBA basketball, strobed NCAA basketball, strobed college wrestling, strobed volleyball, strobe track and field, everything. I mean, we had everything there. So he calls back and he goes, we got your package. And he said, the director of photography wants to talk to you. So the director of photography, Barbara Hankel, comes on the line and she goes, well, we're really happy with what we've seen here. And we want to give you an assignment. So I was planning to do all this over time and get up there eventually and try to get a meeting, and they came to me. So that was interesting. So then they sent me to a Blues game in St. Louis. They were doing pictures of a Blackhawks player. So the Blackhawks came in town, and they're sending their hockey guy in and a strobe technician to put his own set of strobes up in my building. And I'm going to shoot one end, he's going to shoot the other end. So we did this, and it was one of those things where, how nervous could you be? Again, you have no vision of what you're getting. You have to be totally, and this is all follow focus, pure follow focus. Everything about it is a manual and single frame. So anyway, so I shoot the game, and again, we sent the raw film in. So I didn't even get to process it and look at it. We just sent raw rolls in. So we sent them all in, and then he calls me back, and he says, well, good job on that game. And he's a competitive person. He goes, hey, yeah, you really did. You outdid the other guy, and they're going to use a picture of yours in the magazine. So it's like that was a good revelation, and it wasn't some great picture. It was just a portrait at the face-off shot of it, but it was number 10 of Blackhawks. I forget who that was back then. So then the way it got momentum is by giving them those 60 pictures, I gave them everything in the kitchen sink with different sports and highest end, as good as they're going to put in their magazine. See, so then the lady, the NCAA basketball guy calls me, their editor for that, and his name's Eric Godwin, and he calls me and he says, "We want you to." I mean, people just wanted to get a game out of them to do. He goes, "We want you to do the Midwest Regional Basketball Finals and shoot it with our other staff photographer guy, because it was in Kansas City." And then I go there and we shoot this thing, and I got a picture inside, and then they did a split cover, and I got one of the pictures on the cover of the first. That was my second assignment for them, and then this back then they had a little thing where, you know, they were on deadlines and stuff. So, you know, the film on important events, they said, get on a plane and bring the film to us. We want to meet you anyway. So I took a flight to bring the film back to them, and then met them, and then from there it just progressed. You know, 2 weeks later I'm in Atlanta shooting an NBA story on Dominique Wilkins. And same thing, we set up strobes, whatever, and then Dominique Wilkins ran on the cover. That was my first full cover. That was the full cover, and that was just 2 weeks later than that. And then after that, the interesting hockey thing that happened is then May rolls around, and they have I did the conference finals, or the conference championships of both sides. So back then the TV wasn't like it is tonight. This now, they would literally thread those back and forth. So one night it would be Western, one Eastern, one night Western. So I did both series, all games. So I'd shoot the game, and I think it was a long trek. If I remember correctly, it was one of the teams that won was Calgary and one was Montreal, and it was a long. So I would shoot the one game for the Western Conference, the game one. Then I'd fly over to game one of the other team the next day. Then I'd fly back the next day, and I did that for the whole series. And then when that was over, I did the entire Stanley Cup, which was, you know, Montreal played Calgary, and did the whole Stanley Cup, all the games, and then they ran the final thing. They ran it on the cover. And that's one of my favorite pictures ever, because it was just unique, because you had Bob Gainey and Larry Robinson holding the cup up as if we planned it, because that's when they literally, back in the day, they brought out the Conn Smythe and they just presented them, and there's no T-shirts, there's no hats, there's no stage, there's no carpets, and they just gave it to him. And that's when you had those ones like you see Gretzky skating around with the team. That's when that was still going on. So Bob gave me, they're holding it up vertically, and it's literally the only time I've ever seen it done that way. And that's another reason why it's my favorite photo. And that was the first one of 33 in a row that I've done. And the fun fact of that is that I went to the 86 was the first one, and the last one I was at in succession was the Blues over the Bruins. But the little asterisk to this is I went to every game, both cities, and I was the only one that had that streak. Because, you know, think about it, that's kind of hard to do. Every game, both cities, for 33 years for the finals.
Why did that streak end?
Because of COVID.
Okay.
Because the next year the COVID thing happened, and we couldn't go into without special government approval and all, you couldn't get into Canada. See, so I was originally trying to get it to 35 and do some kind of book, but now I still might do something. It's at 33 right now. It would have been 34, except we had that. I think it's 33 because we had that one, when they struck.
When the season didn't happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
But during that, I went over and shot all the Russian players. They went back home and played in their Russian pro leagues. And can I interject a funny story real quick?
Yes, you may.
We went to the Russian pro leagues. They want Fedorov and all those guys playing during the lockout. So we flew over to Moscow and we took strobe. So we took like, God, 18 cases of stuff. It was expensive, but that's how we did things. And it was the quality level. But anyway, we were at the airport and we said, this is kind of sketchy. So how are we going to get all this in vehicles without, we had two of us, but it would take more than two vehicles probably. So we talked to this guy that just, well, you need a ride. So we came up there and we said, well, we got all this equipment and we really want to, try to consolidate this at the most two vehicles, but I don't even know if two vehicles. And the guy goes, hold on, I make call. and I said, okay. So he goes, and he comes back and he goes, okay, we're gonna get you there, because we wanted to go to the arena, and because the electricians were waiting for us at some arena I never heard of. And he comes back, so an ambulance pulls up. So we're taking our equipment in an ambulance because everybody wanted to work. So I don't know if I can lay my hands on that, but I got a picture of us sitting outside with all the cases in the ambulance. And so we're loading them on the gurney and putting them on the floor and stacking them up in there. And then we all pile into the front and we say, can you use the siren? Yeah, of course. And it was just hilarious, and that's just a side note, so.
Your story sounds. Did you ever see the movie Almost Famous with Kate Hudson, Frances McDermott, Billy Crudup? It
No.
sounds like that, except you have to check it out. It's a pretty funny movie, and it's this high school kid who's writing a story and ends up getting, I think he gets the cover of the Rolling Stone magazine, and it's pretty funny because it was started out at the San Diego Arena, which is now named after some casino down in San Diego.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty funny movie, but your story is very similar to that. And the other movie that comes to mind is Serendipity, is just the word of.
Yeah, I'm out of it. Yes,
that one's got skating in it because that takes place at Central Park, I believe, and it's got who the heck was that actor? Paula, you might remember that one. But
I don't remember that. But Cameron Crowe is the person that was the person
director.
They were profiling in Almost Famous, and Almost Famous is like this story of how he fell into that. And David, you must watch the movie. It's pretty much your life story. It's unbelievable, is what it is.
I'll have to put it on my list.
Yeah,
I think so. I do have to say, since you started in Feb of '86, you did happen to miss the greatest sporting event in history, which the 41st anniversary of that was just a couple days ago. Might you know what I'm talking about,
there we go.
David?
Everybody that has ever listened to a podcast with Doug Peters knows exactly where we're going. I apologize in advance.
Yeah, no, 41st.
The greatest sporting event ever in hockey.
Oh,
you brought the Lake Placid.
Hockey.
Yes, it took place in Lake Placid, the Olympic gold medal. And
okay, yeah.
Do you ever critique the photos back then? Because like some of those photos, and I actually have a couple that are hanging, well, they used to be hanging on my wall until I noticed that the signatures were fading away. And maybe you can offer some assistance as to what I should put on the glass so that the lighting doesn't fade the Sharpie markers. But do you ever critique the photos from back then? Because some of those are some really famous photos.
Well, you always critique, and that's the thing with when I was getting into this in 6th, 7th, 8th grade. That's what I'm doing. I'm critiquing and learning that way. And that's how. Then you got to do research. Back then, you didn't have the luxury of the internet. See, so I had to start asking photographers. I would literally go out and onto high school. Not even my high schools. During high school, I would go to other people's high schools to practice. Because no one was saying you can't. So, but other people from the local paper would see me there, and they'd start saying, "Well, what are you doing here? you don't, I mean, and I said, well, I'm practicing, and two specific photographers, and they kind of know who they are, and I said, no, and this is somebody, a sophomore, junior, that's me in high school, telling these local, the big paper in St. Louis, the local staff photographers that, no, I'm going to be a photographer for Sports Illustrated, and I'm practicing. And they're shaking their head, like almost waving their hands at me. Yeah, right. And and you got that reaction, and they know who they are. It's hilarious because they know who they are. So anyway, I got sidetracked, but so back to your thing. But I would look at the lighting, especially. I would look at because a lot back then, like the Olympics you're talking about, they weren't able to use strobe. So you got to give everybody a wider berth on the quality of things. It would be grainier. It would be because it was available light on film back then. So the technology hadn't advanced, because they advanced films a lot before they went to digital. So like those pictures, like the picture, a lot of the pictures you see some of them weren't that sharp because of the lighting, because of you had to shoot at a slower shutter speed, or you had a little grainier one because you had to push the film to be able to even get a photo at all. So you're up against those things, so, and you can tell why that's all going on. Now I understand it. And then you look at a strobe picture in SI and you're just enamored with it, like during the, like I remember seeing ones of Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, playing, and yet up in Boston Gardens has a really good lighting setup. So each building functions a little differently on how well the lighting looks with strobes, based on the shape and whatnot. And that the lighting was unbelievable. And you just look at those pictures. When I was in high school or whatever, you look at those pictures and you're like, this is crazy. I got to do this. See, because that's when I said, what are they doing? And I would talk to people and they say, oh, they're using strobes. And then I started looking into that. And then I met somebody that knew somebody at SI and said, oh yeah, they set up like 8 strobes. And then we just started experimenting with it, and went from there. So that's how, but yeah, I'm always critiquing,
It's funny. I can remember as a kid when my dad worked for the North Stars, and I used to spend a lot of time in the vomitory where the machine would come out onto the ice. Back then they were using one machine, and there was a photographer, this great big guy. I mean, he was huge as a house, and he used to shoot the games for the Star and Tribune, which is the Minneapolis. Well, back then it might have been the Minneapolis Tribune, or the Tribune and the Star before they merged. And he took a picture that he gave to my dad, and I have possession of it now, and it is a picture that I will always cherish, because it's of me looking up at my dad looking down at me. And that is something that I'll have to remember him by to the day I'm gone. And it's a classic photo that you people are so creative. My sister got that talent. I got a gift or a curse of gab, whatever it is. But that's my talent, if it is a talent. And I just am so impressed when you capture a moment. And it's like some of these stories that have been in Sports Illustrated about some of the great photographs. Some of them are, I think, maybe by accident, like the one where Ali's standing over the guy and there's somebody between his legs. You probably know what picture I'm talking about. But we talked with.
I know exactly what you're talking about, because I know the guy that shot that, and it wasn't an accident. See, that was even crazier, because I think he even shot those on a view camera, like a 4x5 or something, because that was Neil Leifer, and that was one of those. And again, you have to pick your shots, because even back then, it wasn't even like that was even a regular camera that advanced film. You had to change. It's like the old style cameras. I believe that was on a 4x5, which means you get one shot and you got to pull that out. You got to put a dark slide in. You got to pull that out. You got to put another one in. You pull it out before you can even shoot another one. So you had to save that when you knew, okay, it's all timing. And right now, there's tons of people that have no idea about that, because if you made them shoot single frame, they would get so so many people rely on the motor. They just power through it. They literally, these motors now are going 14 frames a second. So you can sit there and shoot that and Hail Mary the entire game, and you will get stuff. My mom could do it from her wheelchair, and that's the thing, it took some of the fun out of it, I think, for me, because it went from a craft to like more of a just a job to do, I mean, again, where you learn, and I think anybody coming into this right now, they got to be really aware of becoming good at composing things, that kind of stuff too, because you can crop your way into getting things that are acceptable, but by the same token, you're going to miss a lot if you don't learn the concepts of photography while you're working with these the new technologies, because the new technologies can do so much on their own that you get us being a slave to that makes your stuff a little more basic. You don't have that edge that other people might have because they actually learned about depth of field and learned about the composition. So
it's interesting because we had one of your compadres or competitors, I don't know how you look at it, Dave Sanford, on, and I got to do the podcast with him as well. And it just was these kind of things, it just amazes me when I listen to people who are as talented as both you and Dave are, because you're passionate about your craft, which not everybody I think is like that these days, especially if they're shooting, they're the paparazzi that are chasing the Kardashians around or whatever, and they're just a million pictures a minute. Whereas you're thinking about it, and it's got to be with your skill level based on how many years you've been doing this. You're seeing the action ahead of it, and it's kind of like when I watch a hockey game, I get annoyed when somebody doesn't make the proper pass out of the zone or doesn't pass to the guy that's wide open. I'm looking at it not in the moment, I'm looking at it in advance. And I'm guessing that that's what you're seeing in your mind so that you know where to have your camera pointed for a picture.
Well, and it's still I don't want to call it a guess, but it is still just you still gotta, accept, dang, I was wrong, or whatever. But honestly, when a lot of times you see people at hockey, they might be sitting on the net, just sitting there, kind of waiting for something to happen, and do that in basketball sometimes too. I mean, especially back in the olden days when we were manually focusing and zooming manually, you're all over the place. You're moving around. Your hands are moving. It's like a concert pianist. Your hands are moving. You're always doing that because no autofocus is going to do it. Nobody's doing that for you like some of the new stuff. So and you're shooting on sort of strobes on top of that, so you're getting one shot when you get to whatever you want. So you're always keeping your eyes open, and that's why I say you're looking around, but your mind's like going around that car example on a curve, and suddenly you're over here and you shoot it, and you have no idea you just did that. It's very crazy, and that comes with, and even now I could pick up a camera now. And I remember Canon lenses went one way and Nikon lenses went the other way. So you couldn't now they can reverse it because it's electronic manual focus. But you go back, I could pick up a Nikon lens because I had Nikon back in the beginning, and I could pick a Nikon camera right now and make and sit there and manually focus. It's weird how it's like riding a bike. It's crazy, but it is. It's like riding a bike. Anybody that's done a lot of manual focus could do that because we did it constantly for so long. So
okay, so your first cover for SI was Dominique Wilkins.
Well, that's the first full cover. They had a Final Four cover from that first basketball tournament I did, where they had a grid on the front with the 4 teams that were going to go to the Final Four, because this was a regional. So and one of those pictures was mine.
Okay, who's your favorite cover that you're credited with for shooting that SI used?
Well, oh, and I don't know. I'm up. I lose track of these because I'm up to about 90 right now. Paula asked if I had any, so
I don't know. I don't keep track of these things. I assumed you did, and I know you're
so
talented.
so
It
it's like
wasn't
almost
obvious.
90. It's 90 and some change, whatever. I don't. I lose track. And there's factor. I found a few the other day that I didn't even know I had. It was just, that's the way it goes. And now they have a online kind of offering of the magazine, and they have online cover now too. But I don't count those. I only count paper and ink. You know. But honestly, back to the Stanley Cup one. My favorite one is when Gainey and Robinson are hanging holding up the cup because it was just so perfect. And the funny thing about it was, like I was saying before, that's when they literally brought the cup out, they brought the trophy out, and they presented them. And there's no one holding the photographers back. That was the thing back then. Nowadays, you have, well, don't go back past the rope or off the carpet, and oh, well, you can't go out there until we say you can. All this stuff. And I said, back then, it's like we just went out and did it. So there's like 10 people vying for pictures. But anyway, shot that shot, and what you see on the cover, and this goes back to the whole composing framing, what you see on that cover is absolutely full frame slide. You're seeing it. They didn't crop it at all, you know, and that's what ran on the cover. And the funny thing is, after I shot that picture, they're banging the thing into me because I'm that close to them. And they're on skates. They're just moving around, celebrating, and I mean hit by these guys because they're right there, and they come and they're nudging me with the cup and stuff. So it was, and that's the other thing. It's just fun to be on those championship, like on the field and stuff, or on the. I mean, it was better earlier, but now obviously I talked to you before that everybody gives out T-shirts and hats and confetti and stages, and the bad thing is nowadays with the stage thing and the carpets and all the stuff they have to do to prepare for the presentation, it's gone. The real energy of the celebration is gone.
The
The
spontaneity is gone. It's more
gone.
staged and acted upon. I mean,
Well, it
it's
totally
still
is.
When you get a guy like Sid Crosby winning his first cup, I'm sure that there is some joy that you're able to capture with your cameras. But there's that pause in it. It's almost like the NFL with what they've done with giving out the trophy, and they have to bring out everything and then get everybody up and get I'm going to Disney World or I'm doing this
Or whatever. Yeah.
Hey, have you for all my go ahead.
No, I was going to address the Crosby thing. So the problem is when he ran his first cup, they celebrate by the goalie or whatever. But then there's such a lag when they bring out these carpets and all this stuff, and the players are standing around. They literally are just standing around. So they don't have the cup yet. See, that's why some teams are better at recreating the excitement when they get the cup. Others, I remember when North Carolina, I think, won it, or somebody won it. And I told the people at the NHL, I said, next year when the teams are determined, you should have a representative go into each locker room and say, if you guys win, here you have to you skate with the cup. Because I remember this team, whoever it was, they passed the cup up to each guy at the exact same spot. They might as well have been a figure skater doing a spin. They stayed right there, and the other guy came in, and then the guy would just do one pirouette, and some other guy would come in. It was ridiculous. We walked away going, "What the heck was that?" Because you don't get any good pictures. That's the thing, And then you got the other ones, the other teams that go bonkers, and like when New Jersey won it, and they had good celebration. I remember George jumping in the air, and you get good things right at the end. But then the cup presentation is hit and miss whether the team can revive their excitement. I remember the New Jersey Devils. I'm sitting there, and then the cup's standing there, and suddenly there's a baby in it. So we got a picture of somebody's baby was in it, and it was hilarious. And the other thing that was funny, one time they're doing all this celebration, and I got a picture. the team's over there celebrating. The TV guys over there. The cup is sitting by itself, nobody near it. It's hilarious, you know. Cups
You should have grabbed it and ran.
No, I know. but they said, hey, it made for a great picture because it's sitting there. It's like, this is crazy,
Yeah.
you know. But nowadays, and the craziest finish to one of these, from the standpoint of the on the ice presentation, is when the Hurricanes won it, and the team is really in charge of security and whatnot, you know. So this was, I don't even know how long they were existing before they got it, but it was, I mean, it was fairly new. This whole thing was very new to them, and it's like, oh my God, we won. So they, I mean, you'd have to count it, but there was when the people came out on the ice, they let like 500, it could have been 1,000 people on the ice, like right away. It was like, this is nuts. So you're navigating through. It's like you're at some crowded casino or something. All these people in suits, all these, and they're all out there, and you're trying to find the different players with the cup. But it was the craziest thing anybody's seen as far as the amount of people on the ice at once, as far as that goes. But they were excited, so and that was and that was a decent one for and also the initial guy that gets the cup, the captain. I think Brenda Moore was their captain. And that's another thing that could either go one way or another, because either you're going to get a good look and a good excited lift by the guy, or you're going to get a turn away from us with nothing. We've got that before. Then you got to start chasing people down to try to get people with the cup, because at least you're banking on getting one good one of the captain to at least cover yourself. See. But sometimes that doesn't happen, and then you're really got to go find them and make sure they get. Like I remember Crosby, not the first time he won, but one of the other ones, and it wasn't a very good one. And then you're following around wherever he's going, and then the cup's following people around. Then somebody's aunt has it, so you don't want that, then you're going over, and then oh my God, he's going to get it again because you see someone taking it over to him. And then I remember he was over by the glass. And out in the corner, and suddenly he has a cup again, and that's when he lifts it up, and you get a good look, and they ran it on the cover. So
I kind of wish we could interview the Stanley Cup, Doug. Don't you think that would be great if we could just interview the Stanley Cup, because it might be the only thing that has more stories than David.
Well, it's great, and I remember the first time that I got pictured with the cup, and I'm going to share a story with that Richard Zamboni. We were up in Vancouver, and I got my picture taken with it, and Richard took the pictures, and then he had to tell me he lost the roll of film. And he saw and I'm trying to fight back oh my gosh, I can't believe this just happened, because this is Richard Zamboni telling me this. And then it was like months later that he found it, but it was after that we had gone to an event that the Ducks had, and I was wearing I rented a tux for some event that they had. I think it was Ducks and Tux or something. And for some reason, I rented a tux to go to the event. And I have that picture, and then I have the picture of the first time touching it. But as a hockey fan growing up in Minnesota, which is the old state of hockey versus the new state of hockey out here in California, it is something that trophy to me is the greatest trophy in all of sport. And yes, if it could talk, it would, and maybe that needs to be a cartoon, Stanley the Cup, and that would be a great deal of telling some of the stories.
Yeah, it's definitely the most recognizable. I mean, if you think about it, and some of these places, like the World Series, is pretty recognizable, but some of them have been kind of redesigning theirs, thinking they want to make it more modern and that. So there's only like 3 left that are, well, the World Cup soccer, but the Lombardi, the Stanley Cup, and the World Series, those 3 are pretty much standardized now. But yeah, like some of these, like the NCAA, some of those, they start making them more modern-y, and they want to change them out. So, but I like the history of the Stanley Cup one. But,
I love the commercial, David. Do you remember the one that they did that was like MasterCard or something, and it was actually not really intended, I think, to be a commercial, but the kid whose dad was blind, and they would go to hockey games together, and the kid would be telling his dad, like doing the play-by-play, telling his dad what was happening at the hockey games. And then I think MasterCard or one of the sponsors of the NHL got wind of that, and they surprised them backstage. And the little boy walking into the room, like, I could just cry thinking about it, and he's telling his dad that the Stanley Cup is right in front of him, and they're just bawling. And it was such, it just is that's what the cup does, right? It's that emotional connection that people have with
well,
us.
and it's
You've got to see so much of that.
literally, it's so recognizable, and it's so intricate with all the names on it, because like all the other teams or those trophies are kind of one-offs. It's like the World Series trophy isn't a cumulative trophy. It's a trophy that they slap the name of the who won it, and they give them that copy of it, and that's it. So same with the Lombardi trophy. So they're kind of one-off, but it's the Stanley Cup it's its own thing with all the history built onto it, where the other ones are just replications. Here, here's your trophy. So that makes it different. I don't know any other trophy kind of like that. I mean, the Conn Smythe is like that too, where it stays itself, but it's you add on the history as it goes, So
it's why hockey is the greatest sport of all.
Speaking of hockey,
yes, sir.
Do you know anything about Minnesota?
Do I know anything about Minnesota? It is the old state of hockey, and California is the new state of hockey. What else would you like to know about Minnesota? And I'll try to answer it for you.
I was going to tell you one of my other favorite pictures. You're talking about my favorite picture or my favorite cover. One of my favorite pictures, if you will, is also an NHL one. And it was the Stanley Cup when they at the Met with Pittsburgh.
Okay, now that's heart-wrenching because Badger Bob was the coach of the Penguins back then when Mario Lemieux was with them, and that would have been 1991 when the North Stars lost the Stanley Cup to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and actually should have given them a better run because I believe they won the first game, had a chance to win the second game, and didn't. And then the last game when they gave the cup out, I was up in Brantford at a meeting, and I can remember watching that game and going, oh my God, I think they won the game. Pittsburgh won the game about 8-0. But Badger Bob was his first gig as a hockey coach was at Minneapolis Roosevelt, where I graduated from, and Mike Ramsey graduated from. And Mike played on the 1980 Olympic team that won the gold medal in Lake Placid. And Reed Larson also played there. And Reed was one of the guests that we've had on our podcast. But go on and see if you can stump me about Minnesota questions, or is that your, just a little salt in the wound of being a North Star fan at the time?
Well,
saying,
when I tell you,
I got to see this cup being handed out to the other guys.
Well, no, when I tell you the picture, if you want a copy, I can get it for you. But here's the picture: and it ran double page in SI, and in fact, so it's basically I'm shooting right, and this was shot. I'm trying to think. Oh, you know what? This wasn't at the Met. This was at Civic Center. It was at a Pittsburgh home game. But it's when Mario Lemieux came in on some kind of breakaway and just deked Casey, I think it was, totally out of his pants. I mean, it's great because you could see exactly what's happening. A lot of hockey pictures you can't see exactly what's happening. This one you totally can see it, and it's one of my favorite pictures because, and again, it's a one shot.
I would love to have something like that. That would be an awesome picture. I would only accept it though if you're willing to autograph it. And are you telling me that he did such a great job of deking that John Casey might still be looking for his jockstrap? Is that what you're telling us?
He's looking for his hairpiece. Continue.
I do have. I want to change topics just a little bit and see if you've ever gone to the greatest golf course on Mother Earth, down in Augusta, Georgia. Have you ever been given that assignment to go down there and shoot?
No, I've done the U.S. Opens a few times. Golf's one of those things where I'll do it whenever, but the biggest things, I've done, like I said, I did the USA, U.S. Open numerous times in the women's, but that I haven't been to that. I think, yeah, I mean, usually people that go to that are the people that say, I got to go to that, and that wasn't me. I was the one saying, I got to go to the Stanley Cup. So that was literally the only event I cared about. Honestly, I didn't care. I go to the Super Bowl randomly. I go to these other, NCAA Final Four randomly, but that's why I stuck with that streak of the Stanley Cup, because I that's what I wanted, and there's other people that they have to go to these other championships. So we kind of just split them out. So.
Okay, so one of your competitors, as I understand it, is Joe Photographer, and he uses an Apple iPhone 7 Plus. Can you tell us what equipment that you're using to shoot these days? And are you still shooting any film, or is it digital, or are you doing both?
Well, first off, one of the cameras I use is the iPhone 7 Plus. That's my go-to camera for certain things. So back in 2016, that's when the Apple iPhone 7 Plus came out. In 2016, I think it's September. I could be wrong, but I think that's it. So anyway, they called me, and apparently Tim Cook wanted somebody to use the camera, because this was a big upgrade in their camera from the 6 to the 7 Plus. It was a huge upgrade of resolution and the motor drive of it and all that. So they said he wanted somebody from SI to shoot the opening day of football season, an NFL game, with just the 7 Plus. So I suddenly was Joe Photographer. I'm on the sidelines at the Titans Vikings game with the iPhone 7 Plus. And that's it. I was afraid I was going to get kicked off, because they would kick people out for that, because this guy doesn't belong there. So anyway, I again, I had to get acclimated to like figuring out what to do with this thing, because obviously, it had some zoom capability, but not much. It had, mainly it was just a really good file you got out of it. So I'm doing this. I'm literally going around shooting pictures with this. I did a lot of pregame. I got a great coin flip toss. I mean, seriously. I mean, it's because this had a fast motor technically, but then I'm trying to do, when play came closer to the sidelines and that. But the funny thing is, and I know a lot of the people that are on the sidelines, but then I don't know some of them either. So people were saying to me like, God, this guy over there is saying that, what's the Yahoo doing with that camera?
You look like you just won a contest to be on the sidelines or something. People are like, who is this guy?
Totally. But this was maybe some local paper guy, or some guy come in from some wire service that, and it was just hilarious. And so I'm shooting this stuff, and I'm doing what I can. And like I said, I got a lot of good pregame stuff, a lot of good, coin toss, and some players along the sidelines. But then this guy's coming in. I think it was a Titan guy. He's coming in towards the corner of the end zone. I'm in the front corner in the end zone, and he's coming my way. So I'm getting this thing ready. I'm trying to hold on to it. It's slippery. It's the iPhone, and there's nothing to hold on to. And you can't shoot it. You got to shoot it horizontally, because I knew it would be stupid to shoot it vertically. It would be easier to hold on to, but you couldn't get a good picture out of it, because you'd have to crop a horizontal. And they wanted a horizontal kind of to show that. So here this guy comes in, and he goes flying over this other defender, because he was running with the ball. So he's flying over the defender, doing this kind of somersault into the end zone, and I shot the whole sequence. So I got the whole thing, and so anyway, we sent these pictures in, and they kind of like, because they wanted something that could. Actually, I got to back up for 1 second. So when I said I'd do that for them, they flew me out to the Apple out in California. And their big announcement things where he's on the stage and all that. They brought me to that. So I'm sitting there at that, and then after that was over, they took me in the back with these engineering guys. They showed me about the cameras. They gave me 2 of these in this bag, and they said, "Don't show them to anybody." No one had, this wasn't out. See, so when I was using it, it wasn't out yet, and they wanted this picture. So that's how that started. So they flew me out there, and then they wanted me to go to that game. So then that whole sequence, SI ran it double page in SI for Kids, and the whole thing, the sequence, it was hilarious, all from the iPhone camera, and they were ecstatic. Tim Cook said he loved it and whatever. So,
did you get free iPhones for life?
No, but I got those 2. Well, I mean, think about it. I mean, but anyway, so that was kind of interesting. But that was joke photographer. So that's my go-to if I need to. If someone requests that they has to be done on an iPhone.
That's your alias. That's your alias. Have you trademarked that?
Not yet. But
I think that's something you ought to.
As far as other real equipment, the thing's moving so quickly that to keep up with it, you gotta put a lot of money into it, and you got to also know when to get in and get out of stuff, because some of the technology advances, but then it's like advances in cars. You got to plan your attack. You can't just upgrade just because they say, "Oh, we got the new one coming out." Because like on like Canon, for example, they'll come out with stuff all the time, but I wait for a model to come out where it makes such a big difference between the model I currently use that it makes sense. Because there's a lot of features that a hobbyist might like that I would never use. We basically use it as basic cameras. We're looking for the resolution. We're looking maybe for the motor speed and maybe for some focusing speed, but we don't care about some of the other features. So, but the latest cameras that I use is the Canon 1DX Mark III, which is a great camera, and the Canon R5 is an R camera. It's a mirrorless. That's their current high-end mirrorless camera, which frankly I think most companies are going to start going to all their cameras mirrorless, because there's a lot of advantages, and you can incorporate the video in these things better and whatnot. So we'll see. And then I'm also using the latest in the Canon video cameras line, their cinema cameras. It's called the C70, and it's great. It's really a good form factor, a good, it's a 4K. You can do 4K 60. It's great. And then they came out with a new set of lenses now. They're coming out gradually now, and it's called the RF series. And my favorite lens right now is a 28-70 f2 RF. It's unbelievable. So that they're up in their game, because Sony was up in their game, and they're trying to be competitive, and it's some great equipment now. So
do you have any Blu-ray or beta equipment that you jumped on mistakenly in your career, or have you avoided those kind of pitfalls with equipment?
Well, most of that video stuff we're just getting into more recently, because there was never a reason to have it other than but now with the web and with social media and that, it's relevant to have the video. See, so all that has come and gone. That was for people on vacation and that. So I had some stuff with I forget the small. It wasn't beta. It was the mini VHS or whatever. And it was all right. But it's tape, and it was like, God, this is irritating. You have to convert it to digital, and it just was never any good anyway. Nowadays, all this stuff, this latest camera is crazy good.
David, knowing you, I envision this like large Costco-sized warehouse where you keep all of the things that you had in the past, because you just can't part with them, because they may, well come back into find favor.
Well, any equipment, if you're keeping it, it's purely for nostalgia reasons, because it doesn't come back because of technology. That's the problem. And frankly, that's part of the timing of getting into other things. Like all that Hasselblad stuff, that was expensive stuff. All the Zeiss lenses, and here you're sitting on this. You had the time I stayed in film longer than most people because, you know, it digital at some point it surpassed film, but I was waiting for that. A lot of people started shooting more digital when film was still better technically. See, so I waited, especially if you were shooting Hasselblad. So that's when I waited to upgrade the cameras, and then you would trade in all that stuff and sell it because it still had serious value still, the amount of stuff we had. And I just have some of it left. I have there was the stuff I'm having left. It's either nostalgia purposes, like my first camera from the hockey, and some other random things. But I also have a bunch of stuff I'll probably make some lamps out of or something, or steampunk. So, you know.
Okay, so one of my grandchildren decides they want to be the next David Klutho. What would you advise a young photographer that wants to follow in your trails that you have blazed? What would you suggest that they do and concentrate on to become the artist that you are?
How can you have grandchildren? You're not that old.
Only 9 of them, David.
Holy cow.
The oldest one being 22 and being a sophomore in college.
Holy cow. That's crazy.
Yeah,
anyway.
It is.
I don't know. I mean, when you talk to people, and they say, I want to be in photography or whatever, and it's like you kind of cringe because what's happened. It's so many people. My mom could shoot soccer pictures of her grandson at the local hockey soccer thing. We mount a tripod socket to her wheelchair, and she could do it. It's crazy. So there's so much out there that and it's saturated. It's competition kinda, but there's so much you don't even get competition until you get so, and it sometimes dilutes the market too, because if someone's given pictures we're giving pictures to it to whoever, so then they it lowers the ability for photographers that are doing it professionally. So but what if you're and there's ways to still be in the industry, but you got to position yourself better than everybody else. See, and that's what I did when I started at SI. I positioned myself. I had the strobes. I had the examples. No one else did. So you got to do the same thing with this new world now of digital, which is possible. It's harder though, because everybody starts on such a high level playing field with all the autofocus and the fast motors, and you can, fix everything in post. All those factors come into, all these people can do that now. What I would do if I was somebody, you got to be able to be marketable, because right now everybody can go out there with their camera, and that's why you get my favorite example is people that want to shoot something for a company, for example. I want to do stuff for Apple, or not even Apple. I want to do something for this local dealership or whatever, and you say, can I do pictures for you, Bob? Well, Bob from accounting just got a new camera for Christmas, so we're going to have him do it. See, that's what you run into. You got so many people that are going to do it that way. So you got to separate yourself from that. And one of the big things I see is you got to combine video with photography, because right now with social media and all these ancillary uses for stuff, if you only do photography, or if you only do video, you're going to find that somebody wants both, more than likely. So that's one way to be able to have that ready in your toolbox, is to be proficient in the video and photography, and have the equipment to do both, and become an expert in editing. You got Photoshop and you got Premiere, but if you basically want to be a one-man band, because so many people want to hire a one-man band. Because number one, our budget doesn't prevents us, so you can't have a big crew and a bunch of, and nowadays with the equipment, that's the one thing it affords people, is the ability to be out by yourself and get a lot of good stuff. You could have a gimbal, you could have another video camera, you could have some still equipment, and you can go home and you could edit it down yourself. and then you could produce a short video and this set of pictures, and you did it all yourself. But you got to have the ability. There is so many people that worked in the industry when I was coming up through this that had no desire and or ability to do editing. Now, I don't mean editing picking. I mean editing, fixing the photo so it's presentable, ready to go. And that's important nowadays because you have to be able to deliver something, the end result to somebody, because a lot of people don't have the budget or resources to be able to have you hire a guy or have them do it once you did the legwork of the video and the raw files of the photos. So you have to have that. You have to develop that yourself, no pun intended, because that doesn't even apply anymore. Anyway, so that's kind of in a nutshell what you got to do. You got to become a student of those two disciplines, including editing, and just learn the heck out of it.
Well, that's sage advice, I think. I want to touch a little bit, as I'm a foodie. Have you ever had? Well, and you're St. Louis. You have to have the opportunity. Are you White Castle, yay or nay kind of guy?
But between the hours of 2 and 6 a.m., yes. Because it's been proven that White Castle actually increases its taste palate during those hours. So
it also helps to fend off hangovers, as I recall when I was younger.
Well, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, no, White Castle's, again, I think McDonald's is getting a little too close to White Castle, because if you notice if you maybe last year they had this celebration of the Big Mac. So they had the Big Mac Grand and the Big Mac and the whatever. They have 3 versions, and it was hilarious because the current Big Mac is like a White Castle size. It literally is getting there, and the original one, they were selling the Grand or whatever. It was like the old one, and it was hilarious because you could see the lineage of it, and it was nuts.
I'm really going to have to question if you two are related, Doug and David, because your food, you travel in the same food lanes, the fast food lane, anyways.
Well, I gotta tell you, I'll go outside of the norm, and I'll tell you things. I think some of the and with all the traveling, you're able to sample various cuisines, good, bad, or not, but you're already there, and different countries. Well, yeah, in my travels, I think I'm up to 36 countries and 6 continents, and all 50 states, probably at least 5 times each, is in my repertoire. So, but some of my favorite ones are Nagano, Japan at the Olympics. And I don't know if this is a native thing to them or not, but we go into this one place, and we go in there a lot because basically they bring out the giant hot rock and they put it on your table, and you sear all kinds of meat items on this. Like
I think that's called ishiyaki, and it's like a bunch of hot rocks, and you'll put the meat right onto the stones. And
and it's good.
Smells so good. It's delicious.
It's like a what is that dim sum-ish thing? You just get a little. They'll bring different things. You ask, bring us that other one, and you just do that forever. You just sit there and do it. That was really good. I don't think we had any of the snow monkey meat, but I think the other stuff was good. Anyway, and diners, Empire Diner in New York City. It's no longer exists, unfortunately. It was always the one in movies. They used it a lot. Empire Diner on 21st and I think 11th, and it was good. And I'm big on the old time diner food. It's got to be a legit one though. The reworked Denny's doesn't count. You can't just call yourself a diner or put up some stainless steel. But these, you have to have counter service. You have to have stools. That gets you more towards the legit.
That's a rule. Okay, so have you been to Mickey's on West
course.
7th in St. Paul?
Of course.
Okay, how about the Villa Roma? That is a classic old caboose that they turned into an Italian joint that Brian Stang, who's a drinking buddy of mine back in the day, also was in the rink industry for a while. He and I spent an evening there after a hockey game consuming some pizza and maybe having a beer or two. Ever there? That's closer to the XL.
No, but it's not legit.
Oh,
See,
this place was legit.
No, but it has to have the stainless steel old stools and the tile floor. I mean, it has to be, it has to look like a 50s, 60s diner.
This place did, and it hadn't been dusted since the 50s
I don't know
or 60s.
Did it have the full counter with? See, the problem is I've seen those that people bought and they turn them into something kind of else and kind of keep the old look, but it doesn't wash because I'm trying to do eventually I'm doing a 3D book on diners, and it's going to be called like it's all going to be in black and white, and it's going to be called the Dying American Diner, and then pause, let's eat, parentheses, soon, because they're dying out. I mean, the real estate those sit on are too valuable. So I've got a lot of them so far. I've got, and I do them wherever I can. So that's another thing.
Chicago, yeah, you've been to the Palace in Chicago. That is, I think they've kind of expanded. It's not too far from the United Center. And if you haven't been to it, they would have like a ham hock that was on the grill, and they would slice pieces of ham off that to serve if you'd order ham and eggs. It's exceptional. And if you haven't been there, I'll hook you up with Danny Ahern, who is the Blackhawks ice guy, who's been down there for a couple of years, and he'll take you over there. And it's kind of famous. I think they've done a few movies in that place.
Oh yeah, no, I love the old. It's just that's one of my things, and I will go places and I'll say, is there any old diners? They have to be. I say, they have to be real. They have to have stools. And the hotel guy will go, oh well, yeah, there's a, and then you find them all over the place, but they're just dying out. So that's But the other thing is, in Maui, Mama's Fish House. It's okay. On Maui.
Okay, so I have a story about that. I have made reservations there twice, and neither time, because my wife got ill when we were driving around the island, were we able to go there. I've had friends of mine that's like on their list. So it's a place that I should absolutely positively have to go to, but don't eat what when I go there?
The turtles.
They actually serve turtles over there?
You've never been there, right?
Never.
Oh, okay. Well, no, that's my statement of don't eat the turtle is because they have an area there. They're right on the beach, and the seating area has the sand come right up to it, kind of, but it's in, you'd have to be there. But anyway, if you and you can look this up, if you go there and you look up, the turtles have their breeding thing go on that beach, like it's like clockwork at this certain time every year or whatever, and we're sitting there and they crawl up out of there and they're coming up there. I mean, it's hilarious. It's just a thing that happens right there, so you might want to try to get the turtle time. So
maybe that could be a new 3D book, David.
Maybe. But speaking of beaches, the obvious one is the creme de la creme, Paradise Cove Beach Cafe. That's the best restaurant ever.
Is Jim Rockford's trailer still there in Paradise Cove?
No, but I can visualize where it was.
This is going to be a long podcast.
No, I can visualize where it was. And I mean, the restrooms are still there from the, where they were. I mean, everything's kind of there still, used to be called the Sandcastle in the show. And, I'm going
to have to go there because I've never been to the Paradise Cove Beach Cafe.
When David comes into town next time, we'll all go there because every single time David comes into town, he lets me know when, and then he tells me what day I need to take him there.
Okay. So David,
hold on. I just took this off the table behind me.
The
I love
Rockford
that
Files
show.
book.
I love
Yes.
that show. And when
No,
that
it's like,
show
wait,
was on
it's a
Me
whole book.
TV,
I mean, everything about it is in there. Every episode is taken
Are
apart and
you
all the
the
trivia.
author? Are you the
Huh?
author of that book?
No, I just was showing you because you're making fun of it.
what's
You
your
know,
favorite part of the show, David?
my
Eh,
favorite part of the show
Of any of the shows?
is, well, no, my favorite part is when the show is involving that restaurant and that beach area and the pier. You know
Okay.
what I mean? I like when they're, when they're on that property doing stuff. I mean, obviously they do the cutaway shots every night, there's a trailer. But I'm talking about when they, have the show there, like when he was tasked to be the manager and had to go check everything, and there was crime going on, just the pier, that kind of stuff. Or when
My favorite my favorite part of that show was the start of the show when the phone would ring and his answering machine would pick up and it would be some obscure message for him like your dry cleaning's here and if you don't pick it up we're going to sell it at auction kind of thing. I always loved the start of that show and that was one of my dad's favorite shows and when it was on Me TV, that and WKRP in Cincinnati were the two shows that I would tape from back when I was young so that I could watch, well, record them or DVR them or
wow,
whatever it is.
okay.
But most
So
people
wait,
would be talking about Baywatch being filmed there, and you guys are talking about the Rockford Files. That might be dating us.
One last question, and then we're going to have to cut this off because I'm actually going to have to go do some work. But
really?
yeah, are you a cheese whiz kind of guy? Because that's one of the things that I really enjoy. I love it on a authentic Philly cheese steak. And on one of the podcasts, that was my lunch as I was driving north to South Lake Tahoe, and we had Luke Robitaille on, and he could not believe that I was actually eating bread with cheese whiz. So, are you a cheese whiz kind of guy, or are you an
I
Emo's pizza kind of guy
No,
with
I'm
that
not an
gooey white crap?
emos.
Okay, good.
Not in emos, because Provel cheese is just something about it. There's a texture issue. But the cheese whiz idea, I don't mind. But I would eat, the only time I'd eat liquid cheese, let's just say, is I'll never eat it on nachos. Nachos has to be the shredded melt. But I'll eat the pretzels in it. The hot pretzels, and then the bigger, I'll eat that with the cheese, the liquid cheese, and I like
Well,
a spicy. I got a
yeah,
spicy version.
cheese whiz is not liquid though. It comes in a jar and you can make it liquid, but
Oh
it's
yeah,
like
no,
this
but I'm
more.
saying, yeah, everybody
Okay,
that makes, yeah,
okay,
like
all
ballpark
right.
nachos, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So this morning I had a half a ciabatta roll with cheese whiz and toasted the ciabatta roll and had the cheese whiz on it, and it was spectacular for breakfast.
Rest in peace, Doug.
oh, speaking of food, can I do one more McDonald's
Yes.
reference?
Yes.
All right. So someone asked me this. Someone asked me, how many times has my name been printed over these years in SI? And I'm thinking, I don't really know. So I did a little unscientific math, and it turns out to be billions. Because if you took, like, it's printed in the masthead, and it's like, 3 million subscription, 52 a year plus so it's like it was like 7 billion or something ridiculous. Because even, and if you get say you got you got 10 pictures and the masthead, that's 6. Okay, you multiply that times 3 million or whatever the circulation times 52, and that's just 1 year, and you multiply that by 36 or 35. So I was billions. I want to sign like McDonald's. So
Well, I think you ought to, and I want to. I want to ask you to partake in another one of these calls because I would like to get into more discussion about SI. To me, the greatest sports magazine that existed. I'm not quite so sure about it now, and that they're down to what they're not. They're doing like monthly publications. They're not doing weekly publications, if I
well,
recall correctly.
well, no, it's a monthly, but they had to. They can't, with the way things hashed out with the internet. They can't follow the news cycle. It's old news no matter what. So, but their big mainstay back in the day was these big long stories about interesting feature stuff. See, and then they can get stuff that's unique content. See, right now they can't. just because they rehash what happened in the game, everybody just did that. But if they say, hey, we got the story on this guy and we're going to go out with him on this trip and he's going to show us they got some things then. So that's what they're going to have to do.
These dang younger kids who can't keep their attention for more than 3 milliseconds that is causing publications like that to suffer and not be able to be produced like they did back when we were young.
Before we go, please let everybody know where they can find your books and things, because you've sent us some 3D books and stuff that our factory staff really enjoy. I think you even took a picture there in the factory and we got to see ourselves in 3D, some real fun stuff. So tell people how they can find that stuff.
And that's not over, by the way. I got to talk to you later about something. Okay, so I, when SI changed hands, a lot of us started being able to do other stuff in conjunction with SI, as far as we do SI stuff, but then we could also go off and do our stuff on our own. So I created a company called Cave Door Productions, and it has a website and cavedoorproductions.com, all one word, Cave Door Productions with an S.com. And it has a lot of galleries. It's in progress now. It's up, but I'm still monkeying with it. And it has a lot of galleries, a lot of interesting galleries that are themed. So you'll have to see it. It's equivalent to some of these shows on TV that come up with themes for the weird videos, like Rob Diedrich or whatever his name is for ridiculousness. And I came up with themes to put different sports into the same group. Like I have one called, well, that's gotta hurt. And it's a football guy getting smashed. It's a bicycle guy crashing. It's so that kind of stuff. And there's some video content, but there's a lot to Oh, and there's swimsuit stuff on there from the.
Oh goodness! Can people buy your books there, or do they need to go to Amazon?
Well, the books are on Amazon, and those are under SI for kids, but they're not kids' books. I must warn you, they're regular. We made them not be kid looking, so they're photo books basically, but they're 3D books, and there's 5 of them, and they come with 2 pairs of glasses, and they can be found on Amazon. Just do a search for SI Kids 3D books or SI 3D books. I still think they come up. So, and that's about it.
Great. David, we want to thank you very much for spending time with us today and our listeners. I'm sure they're going to be fascinated to learn of your exploits as well as your alias, Joe the Photographer. We look forward to doing this again. We want to thank everyone for listening in to another episode of Ask the Zamboni Experts podcast. Have a question for one of our experts or an idea for a future episode? Please email your questions or requests to info@zamboni.com. For more information and additional podcast episodes, please visit zamboni.com/podcast or search Ask the Zamboni Experts on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. This is Doug Peters along with Paula Coony wishing you an nice day.